So John Gardner came up last week in our episode, and I've been meaning to bring this up and pull it out since the beginning of the season. But as a lot of people know, I suspect back some many years ago, John Gardner and William Gass had a big debate at the University of Cincinnati for the Fiction Festival, in which they basically argued for apparently 2 hours about the purpose and role of fiction and about morality in fiction specifically, with Gardner arguing that books need to be moral and show you a better way to live, and come from a place of morality, and Gass being the exact opposite. Fiction doesn't, art and beauty is its own moral and is its own morality, not the morality that one would claim from a church. There's apart from the library, from the WashU library, they have a snippet that was published in, I don't know what paper this is. It doesn't have a name on it, but it's like clearly like probably a student paper from the time with excerpts from their debate, which is pretty interesting. Some of the bits I want to read are pretty long, but at the end, there's this great bit where John Gardner says, this is a second, but just let me read this all. John Gardner, I love Bill's writing, and I honestly think that Bill is the only writer in America that I would let in that door into people who count as contemporary writers. For 24 years, I've been screaming at him, sometimes literally screaming at him, saying, Bill, you are wasting the greatest genius ever given to America by fiddling around when you could be doing big, important things. What I think is beautiful, he would think is not yet sufficiently ornate. The difference is that my 707 will fly, and his is too encrusted with gold to get off the ground. Gas. There's always that danger, but what I really want is to have it sit there solid as a rock and have everybody think it's flying. Gardner, Bill Gass is quoted as saying that his ambition in life is to write a book so good that nobody will publish it. My ambition in life is to outlive Bill Gass and change all of his books. Which is a great way to welcome you to this episode of the 2-Month Review, the weekly podcast brought to you by Open Letter and the University of Rochester, in which we take a book, break it down section by section, and talk about it. We are in season 29, which is about The Tunnel by William Gass. We'll be covering up to page 385 today, specifically the section, The First Winter of My Married Life. I'm Chad Bose from Open Letter Books, joined as always by Brian Wood, author of Joytime Killbox, and Kaija Stromanis, editor at Coffeehouse Press. And our special guest today is Lori Feathers, who is a return guest. You've been on a few of these podcasts in the past, both 2-Month Review and the 3% podcast. But for anyone who doesn't know, Lori is a writer and podcaster who lives in Dallas, Texas, and is co-owner and founder of Interabang Books, where she's also the book buyer, which is important. You need to help us out. She co-hosts the critically acclaimed books podcast Across the Pond, is founding chair of the Republic of Consciousness Prize for U.S. and Canada, a prize honoring the work of small publishers, which Open Letters book Melville by Rodrigo Frazan and Will Vanderheiden won last year, which is awesome. And she's the co-creator of the Inside Literary Prize for Incarcerated Persons. For 6 years, she served on the elected board of the National Book Critics Circle. And one of the projects that you're working on right now is the Big Book Project, which maybe is a good place to start. Welcome, Lori. And do you want to tell us a bit about the Big Book Project, seeing that we are reading a big book?
This is a big book. Hi, guys. thanks for asking me to join you. I'm a little bit speechless about this big book. It's a bit different.
Really?
The Big Book Project is mostly a Substack thing, although we do have videos, podcasts, and Instagram. But it's basically a celebration of big, dense, complex novels. Most of the novels that we talk about have a lot of interiority and complexity to them. We do group reads, kind of like this, where we break a book down and read it together, and I post about it twice weekly. But I also bring authors and translators, publishers, and just readers on to talk about big books that they particularly love. So thanks for having me.
Excellent. And you had a post today about Making of Americans.
I did. That book is, I think, going to be my next little obsession. I'm closing out finally a thing that's been going on since April 2024 with Miss Macintosh, my darling, and I've made it to the end. I'm finished with that book.
Congratulations.
To the extent that anyone can be finished with that book, but we are, just because I've got to stop the madness somewhere. We're going to stop stop posting on that Substack called Involution of the Seashell, end of the year. So I've got one more post to do, and Professor Michael Sexton, who's writing for the Substack right now on Miss McIntosh, is going to do one more, and then it'll still be available, but I'm going to turn to other things. And Gertrude Stein seems like a good project.
That's great. That it's a big book. It takes a while. And it is yeah, I know that you have the companion volume, as I was saying, by Janie Sisson and Cecilia Conatrafar. But the what's interesting, they mentioned this in there, but it truly is that you can get into Making Americans and then there will hit a stretch where it is hard going. Not in terms of like the idea of it, but the repetition and the repetition and the repetition. It slows way down. So I
Page
wish you the best.
150. Page
It
150, they say in the
yep,
book.
that's
Yep.
about right. That
Wow.
tracks. It does have that, but it's fascinating. It's absolutely fascinating. And if you keep going with it, stick with it. Don't let it win. Just go through whatever you need to do to get through that kind of morass. It's sort of like the is it the third chapter of Ulysses? That's the one where Stephen's walking and it's all like very philosophical and like very deep thoughts and it's kind of muddy and it reminds me of that there's a patch where it's like, oh, this is going to weed out anyone who's not serious about this book. Get through that. That book is awesome. Making Americans is awesome and deserves more love.
Yeah, well, I think, as I was saying, is so refreshing because it's not some kind of academic, kind of philosophically dense, WTF kind of thing. It's just
Yeah.
like, it's just celebrating the book and all the reasons why you should read it. Speaking of like kind of a hard part to trudge through. Miss McIntosh, my darling, has that too.
Yeah.
It's around page 800 with the Mr. Spitzer section that just circles round the drain and never, ever, ever. You think you're not going to see light at all. It's like 300 pages. It's
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 like
pretty
the pages
bad.
are inventing themselves, or it's like procreating in some way and just
Yeah,
becoming longer as you read.
right, exactly. It's kind of like a House of Leaves kind of vortex. It's
Yeah.
like,
So you might be one of the true sort of champions or people championing I don't know the idea of reading big books because I'm listening to you say like this page it got circle the drainy and this thing but I know that you probably have like the next five big books for the big book project chosen like you're gonna keep pushing through all these big books and that's like, how do you do it? How do you not lose faith in reading books of this magnitude?
well, I'm really not disciplined at all. So I've got Tom's Crossing by Marcy Danilewski going right now. Uh-huh. Are you liking it, Chad?
I haven't started it. I brought it because I'm reading a book called The Calf to do a podcast, and it's kind of a Norwegian Western of sorts, maybe kind of. And I thought that I was sort of interested in Westerns with weird grammatical and spelling and accented dialectical stuff in it. So I brought it with me here to Wisconsin, but I have not opened this thing. It is truly daunting.
It's holding up the mic right now.
It is holding up the mic right now.
And then I'm also into this really fascinating book called Ice.
I saw that on your Instagram and I need to make sure it's in the translation database and it looks cool.
It is very cool. It's a 1,200 page. Kaija, you might get into this. It's translated from the Polish.
Okay.
It's Jacek Dujaj, I think you pronounce his name, maybe.
Good job.
Um, and I'm going to have the translator Ursula Phillips on the Big Book Project to talk about it. But it's this alternative history of earliest 20th century Russia uh, with this sci-fi element that like part of Russia is icing over and the ice is growing. And there's only one kind of resource that's mined in Russia that can fight this growing trend of ice or is able to withstand the ice and allow habitation. So yeah, that's a great one. And then the Stein, of course, We're going to be starting The Historian by Elizabeth Kostova for the Big Book Project on Monday.
Shouts to
After
Elizabeth
finishing up,
Kostova for helping sponsor they're creating a foundation that has helped bring to into print numerous Bulgarian works of Bulgarian literature. In fact, I was doing something for the foundation this morning.
were
Uh,
you?
I did a consultancy for someone working on a kind of speculative novel um, uh, about I don't want to say what it's because it's not my work, but they're like a third of the way through, and I gave them advice. They're a Bulgarian writer, and gave them advice on how to structure it and what to do. Super fun, super
Yeah,
fun.
yeah, that's really cool. Yeah, so lots of big books in my life.
Absolutely. So, and this one, the tunnel, which we should get into. So this section has kind of four parts to it. One that's about the winter in which William and Martha are first living together. He's in grad school, right? I'm not misremembering that, but they're new at the university, and it's in university housing, and they're abutting another couple through walls that are paper thin, and this is becoming like the kind of like overarching like problem of their life and will seep out into all aspects of it. A second part that's family album that is like little moments in time about Kohler's life through different like potential pictures of a sort, but they do kind of go off of them there. A section called child abuse, which is, I don't know, I don't want to say timely, but like I don't know, seems to be in the news a lot these days. That section is wicked, and I want to talk about that a lot. And then finally one on foreskin, in which I was saying that we could open our banter in Letterkenny style by just like going around in a circle, naming different nicknames for penises, because that's a good chunk of that section too. But anyways, we're going to talk about all that. Brian, what did you think of this particular section?
With all of it, from the like page one till right now, I feel conflicted with everything I read in the tunnel. Like it's this just like really, I know like toxic masculinity gets thrown around a lot. And you're like, what the hell is that? But it just has like this like grossly unreliable masculine narrator. But there's still like, even though I hate this person, there's so much like tenderness and humanity in parts of it where it's just like I just feel so conflicted when I read this, and that's the whole book for me. It's just
Very true.
I hate this person. You're like, oh, I feel so bad for him at the same time, but it's like this is all your fault. Oh, this sucks for you. Like,
It's very, very true. The family album part, that part wrecked me last night. There are sections of that I was like, this is so heartfelt and like intense. One general comment that I want to ask you some things, Lori, but one other thing that struck me about this whole section is this is the most Joycean section to me, especially the family album. It felt the most like Ulysses coded, the way that like the perspective works, the sort of poetic nature of it. It's got a lot of Rilke in it. It's got a lot more like drifting away from like a realistic, quasi-realistic sense of like it being written and recounting things. And I thought that was really amazing. That this book can still shift and surprise. 385 very dense pages in is amazing. And the fact that it's still like so architecturally interesting to use four sections in this part to have them connect through like marriage, your family's past, the first child, and then going into like the foreskin and like the idea of like a penis for procreation and for whatever else. It's really fascinating the way that this is put together. I thought it was spectacularly moving. Lori, have you read The Tunnel before now?
No, this is my first read, and um, unusually for me with a big book that I feel kind of on shaky ground about, I find myself usually like falling in love with the first pages and then kind of getting bored with it later. The total opposite happened for me with this book. And I think I've listened to I think all of you guys' previous conversations about the different sections of the book. And you made the point at least once, maybe more, Chad, about the pyrotechnics that he's doing graphically at the start that I found kind of off-putting, and it really those kind of elements really slow down
Yes.
as you get like beyond page 150. And I appreciate that because
You too.
I don't know what it was about all that stuff, but I wasn't into it.
Yeah, I agree. It's a little much. It feels dated
Mm.
in a weird way. Like I like the flags. I like some of the stuff related to that. I think is cool graphically. But yeah, with the sort of the different fonts, the like explosion things, I feel like that can get to be too much at times with any book. But in here, I'll forgive it because it does fade away. And like the power of the writing is so much stronger that it doesn't rely on that. And a lesser writer, it would rely too heavily on those things to keep you to be experimental, to be strange. And the book doesn't have to do that because Gass is such an amazing writer. But I agree with you. I'm glad that that stuff is kind of faded.
It's more though than just the graphics. It's like the little ditties and you know what I
Right.
mean?
I
I
kind
just
of I kind of like those.
You're not a fan of the limericks, Lori?
not so much. No, no. Just
I,
just give me straight up, you know, narrative. But
it's interesting though, Lori, because I found in this section the sound and the beauty of his prose came out. It shines in this section for me more than other sections, and it's less ornate than the other sections.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like for me, like the writing really does come to the surface of like, good God, his style is insane. It's so good.
yeah, just some of the ways that he talks about you know, eh, that he describes things. You know, the house was palpably stuffed with silence. Um, and I've underlined a bunch of those kind of things, but it's yeah, it I agree with you, Brian. This the 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 quality of the writing does really stand out in this section, and maybe it's because I don't know. Am I going too far to say that this section is a little less racist than some of the others?
I was gonna,
That's interesting.
I wasn't gonna quite that way. I was gonna say I felt that this was the most relatable section, but that's basically the same thing.
It's the most misogynistic section,
Yeah,
maybe.
that's what I was gonna say. I was like, oh
we gave
shit.
we gave up racism for misogyny. Oh, what a relief!
Well, yeah, no, well,
BD.
now I'm in a world I understand, right?
Yeah.
But I really okay. I said before we started recording, but I'm about 17 pages short of this section. But the first winter of our marriage, or the whatever the wording is, I the viscerality of living in an apartment or right like sharing walls with other people is just like I was grinding my teeth that entire time because it is so like I mean like everyone I think has been there for the most part, and it's just so like the whatever I have it highlighted, but where Martha basically comes out and saying she's like I just want nothingness. I just want quiet. I just want just void of everything. And for anyone who's ever lived in an apartment, especially in a collegiate situation, like you're always like fuck those other guys, they're so loud. Everyone's lifestyle is always so much more disruptive than yours. And I think you really, and this is going off on a philosophical tangent, I think you really do also in those situations start to form more as a person yourself because you become aware of the things that piss you off and the way that you want to live your life, be it quietly with a bunch of people, with animals, not in an apartment, you know. That was, I felt a lot of things. I felt a
Yeah.
lot of things in that section.
That's that philosophically. I was gonna say there's a very racist section on page 361. I actually think it's pretty important where he talks about it's related to his father. This is in the family album section. He talks about
Oh,
not just being racist, but like collecting it. So now if I don't like mothers, flags, or apple pies, I say so. Or Jews or Japs or gypsies. I bank race hatred like blood money. There are plenty of reasons for any prejudice. History is a gold mine of excuses. So I collect racial slurs instead of stamps. But the line that I think is really important there is he says, I acquired as it's felt, this flaw in my character from my father, who spent his life loathing every man, one kind at a time. My indifferent principle is simply that nobody can really stomach anybody else. So I'm the human racist, which is kind of like the point, but goes into like to tie it into what you're saying, Kaya. That section, that opening section of them living in their first winter of marriage in this space, being sort of invaded by the sounds of the people on the other wall, which then creates like the imagination of like what are they doing? You can hear them fucking, you can hear them eating, you can hear them going to the bathroom, and like becoming self-conscious about it
Yeah.
is a choice because you would think like one option of that is in that living scenario and in the scenario they're setting up there is that with these neighbors you ally yourself against them, and that's hinted at in the sense that they go to parties. He talks about, well, we go to parties and we repeat all these like, you know, these things that these stories of like how loud they are or they did this or whatever, and we get our laughs out of it, and that's something that brings you together against another, which is like truly like part of like the racist, you know, stereotype of like you see yourself and then you other the other, and that they make them your enemy, and everyone needs an enemy to create their own sense of self. But then in this book, that then becomes a self-conscious thing. Like it gets fucked up. And I'm not sure, because he's so unreliable, I'm not so certain that a lot of the stuff of like Martha sort of instigating that is really accurate. There's also the part where you learn the name of their son being Adolf, in which he blames Martha for it. And I'm not sure that that's trustworthy either, given how untrustworthy he is as a narrator. But the idea that they're living together and they turn it inwards and start looking at like, I can't open the door and pee unless there's like, you know, another noise going on in their house so they don't hear me. And we can't have sex because, you know, we're never going to have sex again because then they'll hear us having sex. And he starts envisioning things, and that turning it inwards instead of othering them, but by making it self-conscious, really breaks them and breaks their marriage and breaks their sense of as being a couple, I think, to some degree. And it is weird because you don't want to be like, yeah, you should really just like, you know, be anti them instead of anti each other. Don't let them infest you. But that's like how, you know, a lot of racist stuff starts,
Well,
is going against others.
They start to not trust each other.
Yeah, and they don't trust each other.
Or
right?
he doesn't trust her more explicitly.
And it disintegrates quickly. I mean, and I agree, Kaya, with your point that a lot of the section, except that racist part that you read,
Yeah, we can't leave the racism alone. It's there.
It is relatable, and I did find it weird because yeah, it's almost universal. You know, that I was living in a 700 square foot place with my boyfriend during law school, and it was like a shitty apartment. We could hear everything, but the way that they get so hyper self-conscious about it, um, it does seem really odd, and the way that the sexual stuff just turns off. I marked a comment in here when he's talking about Martha's ardor or lack thereof. And he said that he kind of says he knows that it's connected with their lack of privacy, but that the correlation is more complicated, duplicitous, and remote than just to say like a straight on correlation between, you know, like, oh, the neighbors are home, let's not have sex right now. It's kind of like her moods, I guess he feels, are controlled by their lack of privacy, but it's more complicated than that.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And to go off of that, just because you mentioned the 700 square feet, this section does, and you guys can confirm the last 17 pages plays a lot with space and spatiality, like the closeness, the proximity in the apartment. In the family album section, I have a line highlighted where it's the picture talking about the park, I think, and the last line in that little write-up says that parks create so much space around people, but it's said in a negative way, I think, or in like an uncomfortable way. Um, and that's what I had. I wanted to talk about space.
Well, in terms of space and in terms of that, we can jump to that third section, the child abuse section, which is essentially, in a nutshell, a very like one set piece of their oldest child crying nonstop. and Kohler being there alone. Martha's off at like I forget what kind of group it is, but like some sort of like social group. And so he's there alone, and the baby will not stop crying, and he loses his fucking mind. And the space on that is very like kind of duplicating what was there earlier, where it was like another family invading your space and you are a couple. In this case, it's him in a room, and in the room adjacent to him is a baby crying. And it talks about like the kind of theory that my ex-wife believed in, of like you let the baby cry itself out and just don't do anything. So he's like pretends he's stuffing like paper or wax into the keyhole and putting things at the bottom of the door so that the sound can escape, and letting the baby scream and scream and scream until he can't take it anymore. And then either in his imagination or in real life shakes the crib until it like essentially breaks, and is like, well, the kid's still crying, so it didn't kill it, like at least it's still crying, that's a positive thing. But it's another invasion of space, and very much like you cannot escape
Yeah.
the child that you've given birth to, which was like in this book a result of like, well, I finally got to fuck, and now I've got this kid that's screaming nonstop, and look at my shitty life. That sort of vibe to it, and like that space is invaded now by a new person that is like unwilling to stop crying,
Yeah.
no matter what. Which,
Yeah.
any parent can know that there are moments in which you have to struggle.
You do struggle. And that also, the invasion of space, I think, is an interesting in terms of the family album section, because he's not technically, I guess, not invading a space, but you are sort of invading a space by looking back at old photos because you're no longer in that moment. And he talks a lot about zooming in and looking, and he's like assessing, I forget now what, anything from what people are wearing to the expressions that they're making. And that's sort of an invasion of space also, that the people in the photo, you have like a weird god existence over that. I don't know, that could be reaching.
Brian, I thought you were going to say something. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting when you think of Kohler's current state, where it's this isolated, claustrophobic environment. And when he's looking back and writing about the past, he presents an alienated, claustrophobic environment. And whether that's true or not, it's almost as if it's justifying his current state. Like it allows him to remain a victim. It allows him to like feel bad about himself, or like not take responsibility for who he is or what he's doing. Like everything that you look in the past, it has this alienation. There's like this two-sided like paranoia and surveillance, right? Because I thought it was really interesting how other sections there's all this kind of like voyeurism, this voyeuristic aspect to it, and then this, it was about, well, what if they hear us? Like, well, it kind of goes both ways, like you don't get to have it just your way, like. So for me, like thematically, it's a piece that fits really nicely into the whole. Like it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Yeah. Keep tunneling in different ways.
Yeah, no,
Sure.
Was there any physical, okay, let me rephrase that. Was there any tunneling in this section of him behind the furnace tunneling? No mention of it. Okay.
No. The closest that I thought to that is that there is a part where he references, is it Culp, that he's like, oh, when I first was working with Culp, he was great because like he doesn't want to be at his office. He wants to be back home, or like something to that effect. And there is something about like being in, he's like, I don't want to end up just being in my office all the time, but that's where I am now. It's just in my office, like alone. One thing related to what you were saying, there is a section on here where, going back to what you said about like they're telling these stories at the parties, but then they stop and are like, we're not recounting this whole thing anymore. This is, that's over. But Culp keeps doing it. And there's a weird little section, which probably I'm reading too much into, but on page 344, where it makes it sound like there's a theory that none of his colleagues are real, that they're just elements of himself, of Kohler. And this is one where that stood out to me as a possibility, where it talks about Culp going on about this, elaborating on our originals until they begin to shrink within the convoluted enclosures he gave them, the way the paintings dwindle inside heavy ornate frames, or turtle's hide. That predatory historian, Martha fumed, has kidnapped our life. And she was right, but not for ransom. I still believe Culp holds whole booths of convention bars enthralled with reminiscences of those difficult early years of his marriage when he lived in a hut on the banks of the Wabash, a double hovel he already called it, encountering everywhere in his own air the image of another, and as of course he said, like finding someone else's fart in your own pants. All of that sounds like Kohler. That all sounds like Kohler saying he's the one living on the Wabash. He's the one in this double hobble. He's the one who would make that sort of joke. That's the bummer is like is and the way that it switches there from like Culp saying this stuff, we're not going to talk about it, into like entertaining people at the bar was the first time that I was like, oh, I can see where you could build that out. You can build out that argument that these people aren't these colleagues are just like aspects of him. Culp was like the funny limerick telling, sort of like good historian giving all these jokes and entertaining people, and now Kohler's not that anymore, and he fucking hates Culp in many ways. But this again is like a stretch, but it just stood out to me as the first time that like I saw that theory in here and was like, okay, I can get where you're coming from.
Yeah, I did. I didn't read it that way. I mean, I took Martha for her word and the expression predatory historian. I loved it. And I just interpreted it that he was totally, appropriating their story and regaling people with tales of woe about, how he didn't have any privacy and, lived in a double hovel and, but yeah,
Parasitically,
right,
A
right.
double hovel, is that what we're calling like duplexes or
I guess.
condos?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
So,
Yeah, it says a double hovel, he already called it.
Mm.
yep. Yeah, and I think it could go. I think that's absolutely valid. I just the first one stood out to me just simply because that came up earlier, and I've been like on the lookout for like what
Yeah.
is real, because I have a lot of problems with Martha's characterization, especially in this section, where like we're made to believe that she is, really interacting in some sense, and that she's really there, and that this is who she is. But the characterization of her is so like harshly male. Like the way that like he presents her and talks about her, and the things that she does are like spiteful in a way that like a jaded, angry married dude would say things about their wife that aren't quite true. And
Well,
it has
she's
that
not even a character. She's just an object.
just an object. She does the things that she says are like that thing she says. She doesn't want to have sex. She names her kid Adolf to piss him off on some level. She's like sort of like she's so vilified in these in his telling of it that it gets to that point where it's like this is like where you're at a bar being like, oh, my wife did this and blah blah blah, and like it's not really quite accurate, but it's like to make him feel a little better, which is half this book is like he feels like he never got his fair shake, so he's sort of putting everyone else down to be able to, feel like he did. Everyone else is the bad person, obviously. Martha's the one who's making a mess of all this. If it weren't for her, his wee little Willie would be getting more action or whatever.
Well, that's what that.
Violet.
Violet, fucking that is tight. Like if Martha calls his penis Violet because it's always shrinking. Solid.
That's funny.
Absolutely solid.
That's very funny.
Yeah.
Well, it is cold in winter, so
It
okay.
is.
He
The first
also laments that he cannot be, it's here on page 339. As for our own life, we cared only for concealment, nor could I burple at Marty's breasts. I'm not quite sure what burpling at her breasts, as in the old days, might be, but
Don't look it up on the Urban Dictionary. I'll tell you that.
some of the expressions here are really good.
Oh,
But yeah, I mean, if this is accurate, and obviously he's not a reliable narrator, but for people this young to like have their sex life shut down this quickly is kind of remarkable, even though they're living in a duplex.
I think and this goes to something Brian said earlier, I think there is something to be said about Kohler having like maybe not desire, but an innate drive to self-deprecation and to failure of certain kinds, and just to sort of like, let's say, like a very Germanic, like Ordnung eins, zwei of like you will do this, and if you like you will fail, you will fail, you will be miserable in all these different ways, and that is your lot, and that is what you will have. You will live in a duplex. You will, you can complain about losing your sex drive, but that's what you signed up for basically, and that's what you're going to stick with. And even at the end of the winter section, and I think it's in relation to them, but they're talking about he's talking about their relationship and like the end of the first winter, and he says, "We'd remain married. I would see to that. One life would not be long enough for my revenge." So he's like what Brian was saying, like he's not just bought into it, but he's determined to exist in a certain amount of misery. Because that's it, whether, and I haven't cottoned on yet, is that just like what you do? Is that based off of Kohler's upbringing, or is it something he's learned along the way?
Okay, this might be a good point. There's two things I did really mark, and this might be a good point for to talk about. One of them is on 366 and then 367, where he really gets to like the heart of like where he's coming from. The other one is a few pages earlier where like it's like, oh, I'm going to tell you the narrator's truth. Here's the narrator. But for this part, what you're talking about, Kaya, on 366, this is a bit of a long quote, but worth it. Loss in life. That's what I mourn for. That's what we all mourn for. All of us who have been touched by the fascism of the heart. It's not having held what was in our hands to hold, not having felt the feelings we were promised by our parents, friends, and lovers, not having got the simple goods we were assured we had honestly earned and rightfully had coming. Then he goes on to say, nothing's given, nothing gotten, because nothing was offered and everything was refused. And were fortune's crooked wheel to luck us the opportunity, if even a little power should come our way like a windfall from a distant relative's will, if we had in the bank just enough authority saved up to keep open an account, then what damage would do, what revenge we would take. Just like that bleeding balcony, there you're looking at, must be in Vilnius, in what is left of Jewtown. Good bet. That's how my smile would be. See the rotten spindles? If for the briefest bit of blessed time, I, my habitually helpless hand, just once held the whip. Like that sense of like you never got your shit and you never are going to get power, but if you do, you're going to use it for punishment. Feels very like Trumpian in a lot of ways too, but it seems to get a little bit at what you're talking about and like the heart of his like this feeling that that you deserve this stuff, and by never having gotten it, you're going to lean towards revenge, towards pettiness, towards like hurting others, towards like all this like anger of the disappointment that you didn't get what you believed you were promised, even though
Yeah.
where that's coming from is mysterious.
It's a very extreme you get what you get. And you do have a fit, but you instead of you get what you get and you don't have a fit, it's like you get what you get and you drag down everyone around you with you.
Yeah, thank God Kohler never became a police officer.
Oh, Christ almighty.
I feel like this is the kind of mentality that a lot of cops have, you know.
Yep.
They've got daddy issues or whatever, and so it's like, oh, now it's my turn to whack on someone.
You know, Kohler would have hook, line, and sinker on that $50,000 bonus being offered for immigration agents.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like the title though, like First Winter, because like I don't know, like you think of winter, it's a season, it sucks, but like it thaws out and there's an opportunity for growth afterwards. Like something warm, something good, something can be birthed from it. And in this section, it just gets colder. It never thaws. If anything, it like gets thicker and solidifies more, like it calcifies. And then you can just feel this growing resentment and this iciness and this alienation that is like this forever winter. And like that section you were reading, like it allows room in the heart to do terrible, awful things and feel justified about it.
Yeah.
And feel okay about it. And so like in reading this, I couldn't help but try to do parallels between this marriage, this winter, this resentment, and like Germany between World War I and World War II. Like how does fascism get a hold in something like that? And it's like if it's cold long enough, like you can start scapegoating somebody if you're willing to not see them as human anymore, if you objectify them.
Yep.
right? Like,
Yep.
to me, like when I was reading this, I could kind of see the parallels, and I'm just kind of curious if maybe Gass had that in the back of his mind as he was doing this marriage, and like because I keep thinking of, you know, that title with innocence,
Yeah.
guilt and innocence, and how can yeah, I just thought this domestic, this cold domestic, you know, like stuck cycle that we get. It feels like it could be imprinted.
But
Um,
yeah. I feel like that there's a way to read that title in a way that would be like, I don't know, like a normal academic book where you're like, okay, this is not all tilted towards Nazis or pro-Nazi stuff.
well, like, are we talking about Kohler's marriage, or are we talking about post World War One Germany, defeated, humiliated, economically broken,
Drinking
right?
grapes from Vermont, wine
Yeah.
from
Uh,
Vermont.
bitter. I feel bitter. I feel stabbed in the back.
Hear how much fun your neighbors
Everyone,
are having.
all your neighbors are in control of your life.
Yeah, I found a scapegoat, and
But
I'm disillusioned. I would like to seek some power and get what actually I kind of think I deserve. Like,
and then we finally hear about his first book, and holy shit. Like if he's being honest at all, like this is really bad.
yeah.
It's like it's so intense. So how does he say the completion of my first book, rather short, rather direct, and hurried into the world while the subject was still warm, if not hot. A collection of observations of the war crimes trials I called Nuremberg Notes. The celebration was brief because reviewers tried me with less compassion than judges had for Erman Goring. And then he goes on,
Oh, good God!
then goes on to say, then this part, which is really really atrocious, but is what he's constantly on about. That everyone has this inside of them, and everyone's ready to change. And this is going to be offensive. Apologies, everyone. So they hung a few symbols. What were these? Not a quiet collaborator in a carload, not the Poles who watched and went about their business and enjoyed the removal of the Jews from their midst, nor the Ukrainians who happily helped. Who of us has not destroyed our enemies in our heads? Suppose but a whisper of our wishes leaked out and half a continent was ready to rise and do your bidding. Orders are easy. Liquidate the trailer parks, murder motorbikers, silence the soaps, clean up the town, bust up the trusts. It is the killing, hands on and nearby, that takes fortitude and commitment. And for these opinions, think of it. I was called a Nazi. It's just like very intense.
You put that in all caps and you have a Trump rant.
You seriously, like, you legit do. Although Trump could never come up like a great insult like, when I look at you, Marty, I see a stew congealing in its grease, which I think is one of the so like most.
Well, I can't remember off the top of my head, but like right after that, doesn't he say something like the bitch didn't even cry or
Didn't even weep.
didn't
Yeah.
even weep? Right? Yeah.
Like you hear,
Yeah.
like you see him saying that, and Marty just being like,
Like,
okay, okay, big
yeah.
man.
Whatever, Violet.
Yeah.
Whatever, little Kohler. Okay.
There's some strong cuck energy in this section too.
Mhm.
Like to go back to our Bluey rants.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
it's so like shocking between Vineland and now this how I mean they're both like very fascist books, and they're just ringing very true on our soil, and it's just really disheartening, like extremely disheartening.
every, every day there's a new Truth Social post that I see through Reddit that's like unbelievable and I can't not read. And yet it is like reading this book, but like little less coherent. Although what you're saying, Lori, about the pyrotechnics of the print, that is a Trumpian thing. Almost like,
sure. For sure.
if he understood how to make crazy shit happen, he would. Too bad he's senile and demented and out of his gourd, but thankfully he doesn't know how to do that. But yeah. Anyways, anyways. Yeah, the other really like both like beautifully written. Like I started laughing so hard when I read this, but it's like so rude and it brought home like that point of like sometimes you're laughing at stuff because it's like you identify and aren't saying and aren't doing it. And like what makes this book like a lot of a lot of the pieces I'm seeing now coming out about it are generally like about how horrendous he is. We've talked about it a lot. He's a horrible person. We've like used him as like explanations for other horrible people in our world. And at the same point, there are moments in this book that are fucking laugh out loud funny. Like there, it is quite funny, and it's the language, it's the way that these jokes are told, the way that it's put in there, and they're not like nice, polite like jokes that you'd share at like the Thanksgiving table. They're disturbing, which says something about like humor and says something about what we are that they're not going to get into. But this one paragraph I thought was just so intensely beautiful and like rough. It's from 363. Thus, the darkness which presently so darkly reflects us represents the bedclothed back of my quindam mistress Lou, whose skin I stroked. Ah, how many, many times, beneath the blankets, primordial gesture, until she turned to welcome me, or until we parted as this photo has, an image I have carried with me through my interminable years of marital war. Pretty nice, huh? Hot stuff, I would say to myself, easing it out of its fold, primordial gesture, until she and the picture parted, leaving me with a wife beneath the covers who is fully flanneled and all back. Fully flanneled and all back is just like the most perfect phrasing for all of that.
You know what section I thought was the funniest here is the story of, and it's tragic but really funny. The fact that they call the ambulance to bring out his dying father, and they pick up his mother who's passed out drunk on the couch instead and start dragging her out.
Yeah, that's such a great scene.
They're back on the couch.
It's so bad. No, not her. Upstairs.
And isn't the aunt, meanwhile, like, she's like, yeah, I'll call him in a minute.
Yeah, they're just like, whatever.
Look at this. I'll call him. Don't worry.
The aunt doing her stupid little boxes.
Yes,
like,
that's what it was.
Wrapping
Yeah.
them and fitting them all in
Yeah.
to each other.
That was a flashback to my parents' house right there. My mom has so many of those cardboard boxes inside of cardboard boxes. Like, oh boy. all that.
Oh boy.
That whole section, the family album of like his dad's been very like mean, dismissive, hurtful, a shitty parent, shitty father in so many ways. His mom's like complete drunk, like true drunk, like all the jokes about gin and the wordplay around that is pretty funny as well, but also like disturbing. To know that the character at least is raised by this alcoholic, or again we assume. But this section is like his dad dying, and his dad dying is like what you were saying at the beginning, Brian, where it's like it becomes that conflicted moment where you're like, this is a horrible person being described by a horrible person, and yet there is some like heartfelt empathy there towards this figure that is dying, and he's taking a picture of him when he's dead. There's like that power dynamic is there, but also like there is just a sadness where he's like, there's some line I'm not gonna look, but it's basically like there's a picture of his dad like that at his worst, like right before he dies, thin, just like skeletal, just barely there. And it's supposed to be like this picture of their family and like with the kids and Martha, but it's really like a photo of the last photo of his dad before he dies. And it is heartfelt. There is like a real true positive emotion in there, like some sympathy, but like,
but it's just a manipulation.
Worst. Is it? Yeah, it's just a manipulation.
It's a manipulation for like his own personal alibi, but what is he trying to get away with in the present?
Interesting.
Right? Why is he trying to make us feel sorry? For what reason? Because he always paints himself as a victim. He's saying poor me, but why?
Tariffs.
Like, tariffs, yeah. So I'm really curious about what the present Kohler is trying to get away with and trying to make us feel sympathetic to him, and his I'm going to do air quotes for his personal history because I don't know if any of it's true.
Yeah.
Right. I'm sure some of it is, but it like there's these moments where like, oh man, I feel for him. It's like, wait a second, I'm being manipulated. But to what end and for what reason?
Is it just that as an introduction to his book, what he's written in that book is so appalling that he's
exactly.
like asking for his forgiveness before you find out what that thing is?
Is that the innocence part, friends?
Innocence.
Well, again, because like if he realizes like I'm I'm an awful fascist, racist, misog, like that's me, but it's not my fault. Like maybe it's that. Like,
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point, Brian. It could just be that he's because he had the reaction that he did to the Nuremberg book, the
hmm
first book. Yeah, he might feel like, oh, I can't really continue down this theory or this argument without trying to justify why why I am who I am first.
hmm
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Where to
It
go from here?
seems I'm thinking it seems like this section, a lot of the explanation of who he is or why he is, it's all external, right? Like he's not accepting any responsibility. Or is that just throughout the book so far? We may have already touched on it, but that seems very, very strong just listening to what Lori is saying now that I mean he's blaming everybody else around him.
He seems really hung up on like sexual failure and inadequacy,
Yeah.
and yeah, I don't know how that's messing with him now in the present, but yeah, it's like really screwing with his ego and his like yeah.
But it's never his fault.
Yeah, but it's never his fault.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, he accuses, well, he says that Martha, calls him impotent. And there's a really bad kind of little phrase in there where, he talks about I'm not gonna I don't get it up for just any old, what does he call her?
Oh God.
Slot clock or something like that. It's horrible. But
Yeah.
but yeah, so that's him, passing the buck again also. But there is, I mean, he's impotent in so many ways, right? Not
Mhm.
just sexually and physically, but I mean, socially, intellectually, it seems there's
Well,
really
this is a drawn out, flaccid introduction to the book.
Yeah.
Can we get on with it? Oh no, okay, we can't get it going. Yeah. I remember I must have been like 7 or 8 years old, and I was watching the Golden Girls with my mom on TV, and I forget what her name was. It was the B. Arthur character in the Golden Girls, and she has a joke where she's going to shame some man in public at this like book reading at the mall or something, and she points and goes, "This man is impotent," and the whole crowd gasps. And I'm like, "Mom, what's impotent?" I remember asking her. So I learned about impotence because of the Golden Girls, watching it with my mom.
That's
Nice.
the best way to do it.
Nice.
Yep. What did your mom say?
I think she just kid gloved it, like, oh, she's talking about his pee pee not working right or something like that. I think that's what she something like that. Oh, okay.
okay.
So he can't go to the bathroom. I get it. Like that's in my mind. I think like, yeah, I didn't realize impotence had anything to do with sex, but yeah.
The first thing I thought is then you go back to school and some kid accidentally pees themselves and you're like, oh, it's okay.
Well,
You're
he's
just
impotent. It happens. Yeah.
Oh my God. That would be very funny. I don't know. Is there anything else that anyone wanted to focus in on here? We've got more with the pictures are more of our squares. They're sort of like blackboards or like tunnels. A lot of those metaphors come together. I like that the stuff that you're talking about, the first winter of my married life is telling as a title. And I like your idea, Brian, that there's should be a spring, but there doesn't seem to be any spring. Or if there's a spring, it's going to give birth to a bunch of anger. Uh,
Yeah, if you write "Springtime for Hitler," that's a comedy, right?
uh-huh. Yep. And a musical, yep.
Yeah.
of course. Oh dear God. Um, other than that, like I don't have anything else other than a bunch of lines that I marked that I thought were funny and good. Calling his penis the Whittler, pretty solid.
Did you
Also,
notice though? I think Laurie brought up a great point though that the funniest parts in this book are usually where there's the most suffering.
yeah,
Yeah.
And those with gas, like he wants to, like that's where he wants to infuse the humor. It seems like.
yeah, very
I,
true.
off of that, I think the parts where Martha cuts him down are like the extra funniest.
She's great.
Martha's
Yeah.
I'm here for Martha. If we find out next section that Martha's fucking fake,
Not real.
I'm not reading this book anymore. I can't. I lost Uncle Belt. I can't lose Martha too.
Did you look up the etymology of Gid? I figured that would be something you would nerd out on.
I meant to ask you if you did that. Did you?
Me? No, 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 I didn't.
I didn't either.
Yeah.
I thought of it and then I just didn't get around to it. But I'm on that page where he talks about a Gid is a small god, Marty, the humankind, with more features than powers. The difference, you might say, between poetry and prose. With my fingers, I made a meager measure. Mayor Daly is a Gid, and Franco, Fred Astaire, Lowell Thomas. Then you're not a Gid. Do they come in smaller sizes like bras? It is so good. It is good. That's why I don't think Marty's like really saying that. I don't think she's really Martha's saying those kind of things. I think those are the things that you say if you want people to sympathize with you. You create like the harpyish wife who's like making fun of you and saying these mean things and hurting you, and that draws in sympathy and manipulates people. It's better for him like in the world outside of this to like have a wife like he's describing her here, who is like out to hurt him. When that's like it all feels like it's being manipulated
Yeah, it
again.
feels it's all grotesque.
So that's not the case, but
Yeah.
it's a better story. You don't want to be you don't like who like you can imagine him at a historian conference, right? At the bar or whatever. If he's like, yeah, my wife like kind of doesn't really talk to me a lot. Everything's fine. We live in this shitty situation, but like, life goes on. That's not going to get you laughs. You only get laughs if you're like telling her that she looks like a like congealed grease and she's making fun of your penis. Like then you get some sympathy, then you can get the laughs. But
It's like Rodney Dangerfield's entire act.
that's so funny because Rodney
Yeah.
Dangerfield's coming up on another podcast I recorded. So
Oh,
Rodney
okay.
Dangerfield all over the place
Okay.
today.
But is Kohler really airing his dirty laundry, so to speak, like that? I mean,
I
I,
don't think
I
so.
mean,
Yeah.
we know that, or we think we know that, he and Martha, and maybe he alone to some extent before the predatory uh, history guy Culp grabbed the story. I mean, they did try to get people's attention and entertain people with this story of their combined despair with having to live in this shitty situation. But I don't know that he's going around talking about his impotence.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. I just think like you if you want to get sympathy in those situations, especially from other men, which is like there's the two they're actually with both like men and the women that he wants to like have affairs with that in this book, especially specifically Lou is younger and more impressionable in that way. Coming off as someone who's like kind of that sad sack that like deserves your sympathy, I think would be more in keeping with his mindset of like, well, it is like you say, it's a Rodney Dangerfield. I get no respect. I never get there. I never, I'm doing my best and these people are always shooting me down sort of thing. So maybe not his impotence or his penis, but to just be like, she doesn't have sex with me because she's the cold, frigid one that looks like is all flannel is like all flannel, his flannel and all back or whatever. Like that's a little bit more I think that's maybe closer, but that fits with his sort of persona and his idea of like the party of disappointed people is that you deserve your moment because you never got it. I've never gotten it, so pay attention to me.
Yeah. Well, speaking of comedians and Rodney Dangerfield, I took you guys's I don't know whether it was advice, but I listened
Oh.
to Gas reading, and he reads it like so straight.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Like it's just kind of like every part of it is just kind of like this. I mean, it's good. It's I don't want to make it sound like it's monotone, but there's nothing in it as he's reading it that you're sensing like, oh, what he just read was outrageous. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yep.
Yeah.
It's very tempered.
Yeah, it just feels like narrated.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like Kohler's going to take himself seriously. Kohler's trapped in an unself-aware place, even for being someone who's very self-aware. Maybe. Although there is that one, the one, I don't know, that's true. Now I'm just saying words, but the part that I had marked here was that the part that did stand out where it's talking about the world looks, it's on 360. The world looks trash. This is how the soul seems after every evening after the day has done its bit. And then I think it talks about a picture of his dad and a pump that he's pumping. Oh, sometimes the very emptiness of emptiness is appealing. Is the open mouth receiving tongue or giving one? Is it swallowing or screaming? So I shall show you now the inside of myself, your narrator, your postcoital lover, where actually he is most appealing, cleaned up for company, so the distractions of scattered crap will not disturb your concentration or lead the eye into minor moralizing. Why, you might make a marriage that's better than most out of all this space. A fully furnished flat, spread with buttery light, blah, blah, blah. No, no, no. This is not my inner eye you are looking at here. This is too open and emptiness, too cathedral and outcry, and the grime goes too evenly over the windows. Like, there's that moment where, like, almost like he's aware playing with, like, oh, I if I show myself like as a cleaned up, nice person, then all this other mean racist shit I say will sort of like become background and you'll see me for what it is. So he is like what you keep saying, Brian, of like the manipulation. Like he is creating this. Kohler is creating a character within his own writing to be that sympathetic like self and manipulate you into having that viewpoint of him. It's all very simple what I just said, but there we are. Or start filling space at then. So any other sections that you guys want to talk about? Or favorite lines or fun lines or anything?
I had a fun line.
Okay. Let's do
This
our
is
lines of
on
the week since we have them here. Go for it.
this is on page 356, and again, I say fun, but it's tragic. He's talking about when they sent his mother to the loony bin, and he says they washed all the old makeup off her face with rubbing alcohol. A bitter joke when you think how alcohol had emptied her head like some slop jar in the first place.
Oh man.
Also, I don't think I would advocate to use rubbing alcohol as a makeup remover.
Oh, that's really harsh, right?
Super harsh.
But the image of like his mother's head being a slop jar filled with alcohol was
Great thing.
Yeah.
What do you got, Kaya?
My one of my favorite is, I mean, in the digital is 352, where it starts out this argument that he and Marty are having, and they're talking about sounds and everything, and it starts at the bottom where he says, "And so I said, have you heard your legs lock, Marty? No snick there, no click, rather a sound like the settle of the seat." And then it continues, and like this argument is just super, it's ridiculous and it's funny, and they seem like they're talking in their own sort of marital vernacular, which I love. And then it ends with Kohler saying, "You know that passage in Middlemarch," with the aside, "I knew no passage in Middlemarch, but I can recall insisting that it was every female's favorite fiction." And then finishes where she says about marriage that there's something awful in the nearness it brings.
Yep.
Just middle, you know that passage in Middlemarch.
You know that. Brian, you got one?
I do. My passage of the week comes from the 1964 film Zorba the Greek. And it goes like this. Am I not a man, and is a man not stupid? I'm a man, so I married. Wife, children, house, everything. The full catastrophe. So while it's not in this section, I thought it applies wonderfully to this this section.
It really does. Mine is 360. If you cast your bread upon the waters, it will simply sog up and sink. But if you piss in the pond, you will poison the fish.
That's a weird aphorism. I don't know that one.
That's like very, very late Confucius.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
so I should say I teased earlier on one of the posts about this that we would announce we have our next two books lined up for seasons 30 and 31. And I feel like this is a good episode in which we can unveil the next book, which is following in our theme of fascism, will be I the Supreme by Augusto Roa Bastos, which is translated by Helen Lane. It's a Paraguayan book about a dictator known as Dr. Francia and Policarpo Patino, his secretary and companion. I have never read this. It's available now from Vintage. It was reprinted, I think it was originally published by Random House. It was reprinted by Delkey back right before I started there, like in 1998-ish, 1999. I've had it for years, never read it. But because we are all about fascists right now and dictators, we figured that would be a good move. Vineland, the tunnel, I the Supreme. So we'll go for that. But that won't be starting until February. This is an early tease, but thought you guys might want to know. Um, Anything else you guys want to talk about? I mean, we didn't get too much into the child abuse section, but that's probably for the best. Although I did think that was it's a pretty harrowing and immediate stream of consciousness moment of being stuck with a screaming child, which is tough and reminded me of that really wonderful David Foster Wallace story called like what is it? Is it like Chronicles of Burned Children? Something like that, part one.
Yeah.
That's is that it's the title's close to that, but it's in Oblivion. It's like 3 pages, and it's just like a story of how young kids maybe like
Boiling water poured on a baby.
boiling water poured on a
Yeah.
baby and the by accident, and the dad's like cleaning, they're both the parents are cleaning him off and drying him and like trying to like make the baby stop screaming. He won't stop screaming. He's turning red, and it's like all in their minds, and it's so intense, and it's like fucked up so bad. And what can we do for this baby? And then finally realize that the baby's diaper is on, and all of the hot water has like soaked into the diaper, and that's what the screaming is coming from, and that's the end of the story. Um,
Fuck, man.
and that this part resonated, right, brought that to mind for me because they're both like tough.
Yeah, there's an image I remember him using that when the father opened the diaper, he like punched haymakers in the air, like punching at the air or something. It's like, oh,
Yeah.
well, I read that to my daughter last night before bed. She loved it. It was a great bedtime story. Yeah.
Perfect. So next week we should just end there, but next week we're going to be going over the Curse of Colleagues, which goes up to page 437, I believe that's right. And that will be our last episode for 2025. So anyways, till then, you can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. Subscribe to the Substack, 3% problem.substack.com. Rate us, that's nice. Review. Welcome any of your comments. And then next week we'll be back with the Curse of Colleagues, which I'm gonna have a lot of fucking fun with.
I was gonna say, and where can we find you, Lori?
Yes, Lori, where can we find you?
You can find me on Instagram, Lori A. Feathers. You can find me at Interabang Books, and you can find me on Substack at The Big Book Project.
Excellent. So we'll be there. Talk about Making of Americans over there. Pay attention to all the things that you're doing, and I got nothing else.